A warm welcome to everyone joining us in this Zoom webinar today. My name is Brian, and joining me today, we have Charlotte and Prof. Eric from Nanyang Business School's Business Analytics Club. We have lots of exciting content in store for you, and by the end of the hour, you should have a clearer understanding of what exactly entails data visualization. Next slide, please. We'll kickstart this webinar with an opening address by Professor Eric Kwon, who serves as the faculty advisor for our club. This is followed by a Q&A session. After the address, we'll introduce everyone to the world of data by looking at the various terms and tools used in the industry. This is followed by a walkthrough of Tableau, one of the world's most popular data visualization tools. And at the end of it all, we will host a live demo of Tableau by using it on a real-life dataset. So make sure you stay till the end to see Tableau in action. We will also have a second Q&A session at the end to answer any new or remaining queries. Without further ado, let's kickstart our webinar on data visualization and you. Our guest of honor today is Professor Eric Kwon, an assistant professor of information technology and operations management in Nanyang Business School. He has a wealth of experience working with leading industry partners in diverse industries, and his research has garnered him various honors and awards, including the Best Paper Award by the International Conference on Information Systems. Prof. Eric, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining this webinar and hope you're having a good lunch at your work or home. Yeah, this is Eric from NTU Business School, and it is my great pleasure to join this valuable webinar and have a chance to share my experience of data visualization, particularly with respect to its value in both business and individual's career. Could you go to the next slide, please? Yeah. Before moving on, let me briefly introduce my previous and ongoing data analytics project, consulting and education experience, so that I can build some credibility. I have worked with a series of firms in diverse industries, including the leading banks in Korea and Vietnam, and also the various fintech companies, and leading telecom and mobility providers in China, Korea, and other ASEAN countries, as well as games, marketing, retail, and healthcare industries. So in this webinar, I would like to share my data visualization experience and what is happening in the field with you in this webinar. And before Charlotte and Brian, the main committee members of our school's proud Business Analytics Club, BAC, will introduce you the fundamentals of data visualization and demonstrate the use of powerful visualization technique, the Tableau. Next slide. Yeah, so even in early 2010, data visualization was a good to have skill and thus not required for every individual. Only a few data-minded and quantitatively motivated managers use it for their own communication and decision-making. So it's like an edge for each individual. And let's change it. And now, communication with data visualization is like a must-have skill and becomes common practice across every business sector. I want to discuss about what brings this change. Data itself is thank you. The data itself is the major driving force. Now, data is coming with overwhelming velocity in huge volume. Thus, if we don't abstract the data, we cannot understand it. We cannot find a single meaningful pattern from it. And we cannot explain its characteristics to others and communicate this to others. And cannot develop and test some hypothesis based on the data and make corresponding data-driven decisions. So in this respect, visualization is a very useful tool to abstract the data. So that's why the data visualization becomes this common and becomes a must-have skill. Next. Let me introduce one of my recent experience at a major global mobile game provider, Netmarble. This mobile game provider operates a lot of games, and each of game has millions of global active users. And each user behavior is recorded every second, actually every millisecond, using about more than 10,000 columns. So these columns include each character's location coordinate, real-time status, such as health power and magic power, and also the use of skills, what kind of skills are used at what time, to which players, and item inventories and chat histories. So for every minute, more than gigabyte of data is collected. And against this backdrop, manager's task is to detect anomalies exist in data, which would represent some technical glitches of the game or cheaters who use illegal softwares to play game. And delayed responses to such anomalies will lead to the huge cost for the company. And the question is how to detect such anomalies in the game. Next. Yeah, the first and the easiest option is like manually going through all the data, row by row and column by column. This might be doable if data comes slowly in a small volume. Again, however, tons of data is coming with overwhelming velocity, which is common in these days in almost every business sector. I'm quite sure that anyone cannot find a single anomaly from this in this approach. So, like other companies, this company developed a dashboard which summarizes all the key information for anomaly detection using the data visualization tool. Actually, in this company, they use the Tableau. So I'm sorry that I cannot show you the actual details of the dashboard due to some agreement with the firm, but the actual dashboard shows the average usage pattern of overall users and which users' usage pattern deviate from this normal pattern using a series of different graphs. Specifically, we can see how users' weekly playing time or movement distance, number of skills used, number of items exchanged, or number of logins are distributed. And therefore, we can easily identify which users are abnormal. Abnormal users whose playing patterns locate at the end of their peers distribution. Next. Such use of data visualization is not limited to game business. Boeing, for example, the aircraft manufacturer, also improves the efficiency of their aircraft takeoffs and landings in the same way. This is because, as in the Netmarble, the game company, improving the efficiency means that detecting the inefficiencies hidden in the anomalies of the data. Given that each takeoff and landing create huge data coming from all the numerous sensors in the aircraft, data visualization and dashboard is very helpful. And the commonly used examples in the bank, that is a fraud detection, also work in the same way, given that fraud indicate certain kind of anomalies in financial data. Next. Then some of you might ask, is data visualization used only in these tech-savvy companies? And if so, should I learn this? My answer is yes. Now, visualization was in early 2010. Data analytics model development is a good to have skill, as in the middle. So model development skills would be required only in tech-savvy companies and for a few employees. But again, data visualization is a must-have skill in almost every business sector. This shows, this graph shows the process of data analytics and roles of visualization. As you can see, the data visualization plays a critical role in data exploration and also the result communication, which don't require model development skills. Specifically, visualization is a key to find meaningful patterns from data so that you can set up and test an important hypothesis about your business strategies. You can therefore develop and execute business strategies based on a more solid logics and convincing quantitative evidence in addition to some value theories and speculation in your business. And therefore, business also makes your communication in business more effective and credible. That's why the visualization is not only required for some tech-savvy companies, but also required for every individual in this webinar. Next slide, please. And let's go back to how visualization becomes a must-have skill. I said that the driving force was the volume and velocity of data. So tons of data coming in overwhelming velocity makes some manual going through of the data becomes impractical. Then, guess what was the previous excuse for not learning data visualization? That is, actually, previously, the data visualization requires high computing cost, high computing power, and also the coding skills, right? But now, thanks to the technological advancement, every personal computer has enough computing power for data visualization. There are a lot of affordable tools which make you easily translate data into visuals, regardless of your coding skills. So there is no excuse. One of such tools is Tableau that Charlotte and Brian, the main committee members of the BSc, will introduce you shortly. And hope you learn a lot from the following session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric, for that very insightful presentation on data analytics and visualization. We can clearly see how data visualization has applications in a broad range of industries, from game development to aviation. We will now open the floor to a 10-minute Q&A. Note that we will also have another Q&A session at the end of the webinar, so no worries if you don't have a question at the moment. You can leave your question in the chat box anytime before the end of the webinar. I see we already have one question in the chat that says, there are several data visualization tools in the market other than Tableau. How do we choose one that is suitable for our needs?
Yeah, thank you for the good question. So actually, in average case, there is not many options as an individual employee to choose the visualization tools. So when you join certain companies, there might be some tools that are already being used in each organization or each team or each company. So, and I would like to say that every tool has a common language and common grammar. So if you learn about one of the tools, and then just adapting to the other softwares might not be some serious problem. So if you learn about the Tableau in more details, then you can easily use any other visualization tools like, yeah.
I guess for this question on which tool to use, I guess I have a bit of experience in my previous internship. So basically the decision was between Tableau and Power BI. So really these two are like one of the two biggest players in the data visualization and analytics space. So I guess one of the few things that my company considered was, number one, was the ecosystem. So Power BI is developed by Microsoft, so it actually integrates very well with the existing Microsoft tool chains like SharePoint and Microsoft Power Automate, which is a robotic process automation application. So for our case, our company had extensive use of SharePoint as sort of like the company's intranet, and we also use quite a bit of RPA in our daily work. So for us, Power BI was kind of the more obvious choice to lean for. However, we do research online, and it does say that Tableau may be faster if you have lots of data. And personally, this is my own opinion, but personally, I think Tableau may be slightly easier to develop because there's a lot of custom tools that Power BI necessarily might not have. Like for example, you want to do a custom sorting, for example. Tableau is easier to do custom sorting than Power BI, where you have to implement a separate table with your sorting order in order to do a custom sort. Yeah.
Thank you, Brian.
The next question is, how do you write technical specifications for data visualization?
What do the technical specifications indicate?
I guess it's something like the requirements for, like, how you indicate what you need in the data visualization, like in the requirements documents that you pass to your IT department or your external vendor who is tasked to develop these visualizations.
Actually, I think that the most important part of the visualization is not just drawing graph. So again, the visualization is not just drawing what you have in your data, and it is more of drawing what you think true and see whether that is really true or not. So in statistics, we call this as the hypothesis development and testing. So before visualizing your data, it is important to first think about, develop your logic and which evidence is required to support each link in your logic. So for example, if you need to support the relationship between X and Y, then X will lead to Y would be your hypothesis. So you can then think about which visualization method would be helpful to make such graphical evidence. Yeah.
We have another question by Edmund Liu, and actually he has two questions. So number one is, what are the recommendations for data analytics learning if one were to embark on the data analytics journey for company employees? And number two, is it very difficult to embrace data visualization in today's working environment?
For the second question, it's not that difficult. Actually, for the companies that are working with, all the companies that are working with, usually embrace the data visualization in their working environment. So actually, almost every employees are using data visualization in their own way, at least using some Excel or Tableau, right? So my answer to the second question is not that difficult. And the first one, what are the recommendations for data analytics learning if one were to embark on the data analytics journey for company employee? For data analytics learning. So if you are dealing with the data in your company, so I recommend you to take at least some basic courses online. There are a lot of available online courses, especially for the data analytics, right? So in the it's too broad. The data analytics learning. Give me a second. Yeah. So, and if you find some interest, in your online learning, then you can take some master's program in some universities or some official certificate from some online learning providers. So there could be some start point for your journey to the data analyst. Yeah, can it be the answer?
I guess, yeah, I think that could be an answer, because I think data analytics learning, there's a lot of courses available online, like on Coursera or edX, that you can use to learn data analytics from scratch. So say you have zero coding background is still okay, because you can still learn those courses kind of teach you from scratch. So I think online, there's actually quite a good few courses online to learn data analytics. And in terms of the masters, actually, I think MBS has a MSBA, right? Masters of Science in Business Analytics.
Actually, I've heard that there are a lot of some organizations which even in Singapore to organize offline courses and some clubs, right? Especially, who share the interest in the data analytics. So you can join this kind of clubs or some non-profit organizations to learn about some data analytics. So actually, for the data analytics, there's no standard for the learning journey. So, and the details of the data analytics and some popular techniques changes every day. So I recommend you to first take the really basic 101 courses, because the fundamentals of the data analytics never change, right? So, and taking these courses first, and then think about whether you have more interest. And then you can join some clubs or some master's program or some more formal types of education.
Another question is actually quite related to the topic on data analytics courses. What are some of the skills that you think is important in order to learn data visualization and analytics? Because this question asks, if I'm not strong in that skill, like good analytical thinking, is it advisable to enter the analytics field?
There's one need to have. Actually, for me, the analytical skills is like a grammar. So it's really a technical skill. So I believe everyone can learn and equip with some analytical skills. So again, I think more important thing is some logical thinking skills. So even if you don't have any strong analytical skills, I think eventually you can have. So whether you have strong analytical skills or not is not a good indicator for whether you decide to join the data analytics field or not. So for some enough trainings and learning, then you should be able to equip with some analytical skills. And more important skill is for me the logical thinking skills, and it needs a lot of more practice. So you better think about in every business step in your business, so you can practice what could be some, I mean, you can practice to develop the hypothesis first, and then think about what are the required evidence to support this hypothesis. And based on the hypothesis test, you can develop your own strategies. So in addition to some vague theories or some qualitative argument, you can first think about what can be added. I mean, what kinds of quantitative evidence or quantitative data-driven decisions can be made in your business. So for the logical thinking skills, I think there are not that many some courses that you can take. So it is more of everyday practice.
Thanks for the answer. Mark.
And again, for the analytic skills, yeah, you can take a lot of, there are a lot of available online courses.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that as well. I do think, I guess it's how you define analytics skills, because it's actually quite like a broad term. I guess in general, if you have attention to detail and really have I guess like a curious mind, so you kind of ask like the why behind, like, why is this happening, why is that happening, those sort of stuff, and then you can, and as well as attention to detail, so you kind of know, like, you pay attention to the details and just make sure you don't gloss over any important stuff. I believe that you can do well in the analytics field. Again, I guess it's how you define the analytics skills are, because it's actually quite a broad it's quite a broad skill set. Like what Prof. Eric mentioned, it's kind of like grammar. It's quite broad, so you need to really understand which specific part of the whole analytics process that you're not that familiar with, and maybe you can practice from there. Yeah, we'll take okay, there's two questions by Marku and Sing Lun. I hope I got your name right. About machine learning. So there's a lot of discussion using ML and AI, like machine learning, artificial intelligence. But so how much of the problems will visualization solve, and how much will AI and ML solve? And in general, does data analytics involve machine learning?
Yeah, machine learning becomes more and more being involved in the data analytics, but I'm not sure how can I say that what is the specific percent for the visualization and AI machine learning solve the business problem. But yeah, but actually in almost every business organizations that I'm working with, in every team, they're using some visualization method. So I think it's more than 90%. But how often AI ML is needed? My answer is like, how often? As of now, I think it's not that often. It becomes increasingly more often. So as the visualization was in the early 2010, I think the AI and ML is not used often in these days business, but yeah, it's growing pace is like too high. So for data analytics, does it involve using, data analytics involve machine learning. So what is the company use model? Commonly used model. Yeah, neural network or deep learning are the most commonly used because they have some formal packages. So even though you don't have some fundamental understanding of its algorithm and mechanisms, and you can easily adopt those uh, packages in your business. So those are the two most commonly used models in the data analytics.
Okay, we have time for, I guess, one or two more questions. So one of the question is data visualization limited to MNCs, and how will data visualization help SMEs? And I guess a related question is, what are some open source tools that are used in organizations?
I don't think that we need some huge budget for the data visualization. Actually, the most of online tools are free or at the very low cost. But the more important thing for the data visualization is whether you have some very organized data set. So if you don't, in your business, if you don't have some organized data set, there could be some huge costs to structuralize and organize your data so that you can put this data into the visualization tools. So other than this, I think you don't need to build some big financial resources to start the visualization.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with what Prof. Eric said, because I guess one of the two aspects of the resources are like the licensing for the software, as well as like the cost to clean and prepare the data. So in terms of software licensing, Tableau and Power BI are paid. However, I think sometimes you have to check with your company's IT licensing guy or representative, because sometimes based on the Microsoft plan that you have, you might already have Power BI Premium together with your Office 365 license. But even if you don't, I believe there's free tiers of Power BI and Tableau that you can use. And in terms of open source software, there's also like RStudio that actually we teach, that the MBS teachers in our MBS Business Analytics curriculum, RStudio, which is a free, RShiny, sorry. RShiny is a free and open source data visualization tool that you can use if licensing cost an issue for you. And the second aspect is the data cleaning, because if your data is messy and unstructured, you take some time and resources to clean, to hire people to clean. So that will be an extra cost for your company. A very last question by Sam Lee. So in your experience with organizations who embark on a data visualization enablement journey, what are some of the top challenges that they face? And what is your advice to any future leaders who are preparing the organization towards a data-driven culture?
Yeah, the top challenges in the business in terms of using the data analytics and some visualization is, I think, making the environment that, I mean, where the talking with the data or numbers or visualization method, in addition to some qualitative theories or some basic argument. So actually, even in early 2010, the most marketing companies decide their business strategy, I mean, marketing strategies based on some value hypothesis or some just gut feelings or some, how can I say, some intuition, something like that. But these days, the more and more marketing companies are based on making their marketing strategy decisions based on some numbers. For example, they conduct A/B tests and to see which strategy is more effective than the other. And they also do some surveys to get some numbers with respect to the preference for the customers. So I think the top challenge is for the business leaders to increase the data analytics and visualization in their organization is to making the environment where their employees are talking with the numbers and talking based on some hypothesis and quantitative evidence or some experimental result. Yeah, some more compelling and convincing evidence based on the data.
Thank you so much, Prof. Eric, for answering all these questions. So in view of the time, we have to pause this Q&A session for now. It's great to see many of you posting so many thought-provoking questions in the chat, and we wish we can continue going through them now. But in view of the time, we have to move on to our section on teaching data visualization, as well as our live demo of Tableau. So keep the questions coming and make sure you stay to the end of the webinar where we try to answer the rest of them. So without further ado, let's move on to our introduction to the world of data, hosted by Charlotte.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Charlotte, a year 3 student. And on behalf of NTU Business Analytics Club, I will be going through how we can craft data visualization through Tableau. So before we begin, I would like to share briefly about data analytics and visualization, as well as its applications. So actually, I see that a lot of questions were being asked about data analytics and data visualization. So I thought it's good to establish the difference between data analytics and visualization. So first off, I'll define what data analytics is. So data analytics is the science of analyzing raw data to make conclusions about that information. So actually, data analytics can be broken down into 4 components: descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, as well as prescriptive. So descriptive represents what this data represents. It accounts for what is going on with the data and what it shows about a certain trend or so on. And then diagnostic analytics is more like understanding the why. So why certain patterns or trends is being represented by the data. And next we have the predictive analytics, which represents what happens next. So it's based on the current data we have to do a sort of forecasting. So things like we know about machine learning, about some time series forecasting would be utilized at this point. And then lastly, we have prescriptive analytics, which is what to do next. So given our current data and given this current representation, we know what may happen next through to predictive analytics. So then after that, we prescribe what should we be doing. So what is the next step given the current data? So this is more on the decision-making level. So specifically for descriptive as well as diagnostic analytics, actually the derivation of these conclusions can be supported by data visualization. So I'll be covering more on what data visualization is. So data visualization is actually like what Prof. Eric mentioned at the start. It's a translation of data into a more visual context. And I think data visualization, as mentioned, is very useful in the sense that it makes data easier to understand, such that we're able to draw specific insights or conclusions from, especially through the use of identification of patterns, trends, or outliers. So I think with this brief introduction, I hope that data analytics and data visualization is clearer to you guys. So without further ado, I'll be moving on to covering certain data visualization tools in the marketplace. So as mentioned, there are many visualization tools available, some that are free and some that are paid. So I believe that some of you may have encountered 1 or 2 of these or even more. So I do encourage us to continue exploring such tools to find out which ones we're most comfortable with using. So for today, however, we'll be just focusing on Tableau. So I'm sure the phrase Tableau has been thrown around quite a bit since we started, but maybe I'll give you a brief introduction of this software in case you're unfamiliar with it. So actually Tableau is one of the most renowned data visualization software. So it enables users to visually express data by translating drag and drop actions into queries through an intuitive interface. So Tableau is actually one of the most widely used software across the APAC region for data visualization. And I think it's very popular, especially due to it being easy to pick up and yet enabling users to have a great standard of visualization. So before we go to the sharing on the interface, I would like to first share more about the products that's offered by Tableau. Especially being a beginner, sometimes I think it's essential to first distinguish these different products to obtain a better idea of which we should subscribe to. So actually Tableau Desktop is actually the professional version. So it essentially covers all the available functionalities from transforming the data to visualizing the data and storing it. While Tableau Public is actually the professional version, the free version, sorry. So it allows you to use most of the software functions. However, you're unable to save the workbook locally. So you would then upload it to Tableau Public. Lastly, we have Tableau Reader, which allows you to read the Tableau files. So if you want to share your workbook by sending a file, the receiver will need to have a Tableau Reader to open the document. So it's similar to the concept of a PDF reader, for example. So without the reader, you may need to share it publicly, or you have to convert the Tableau workbook into a PDF format. So I believe actually most of us here would either start our journey on either the Tableau Desktop or the public version. So to identify whether or not you may need to get the paid desktop version really depends on your requirements. Personally, I believe that actually data visualization is like an art. So sometimes we express ourselves better upon getting inspiration. So actually, I would greatly recommend users of Tableau to check out Tableau Public for free resources, as it offers data and visualizations made by users across the world. So it's actually like a Tableau community. So it's a great place to learn more about the capacity of the software, new ways in which data can be presented both efficiently as well as aesthetically, to convey to your clients or higher ups, or even for your personal use to draw insights. So without further ado, I will jump straight into Tableau Public on my desktop to have a short run through of its interface. Okay. So as you can see over here, I hope you can see my interface over here. So this is the Tableau Public interface. So when you enter, actually, you realize that you see a launch page similar to mine, where you can have is a connections page. So as you can see over here, the step one for all creation of dashboards or visualization would be the creation or the connection to a file or a server. So a file refers to a local file on your computer, while a server refers to a connection to the cloud, and is usually used to build live dashboards that are updated in real time. So this is actually more typically used in companies where their own cloud server with their own cloud servers. But for this demonstration, we'll be connecting to a file. So as you can see from the top left-hand corner, you see a small Tableau logo over here. So by just clicking on it, you can toggle to the worksheet page over here. So this is actually where you will develop your visualization, and we'll get to this very soon. So if you click on the icon again, you'll be brought back to the connections page. So since we are orientated with this connections page, I will show you how to simply use this interface. So first off, I will add a sample data set over here. So I'll add the host data over here. So before we move further, maybe I'll give you a brief introduction of this data set very briefly. So actually, this is an Airbnb data set for New York City. So I'm sure many of us are familiar with Airbnb. It's a platform service that lets property owners rent out their spaces to travelers looking for a place to stay. So actually, our current data set has been broken down into two components, which are the host as well as the listings. So as you can see over here, our host data has already been added into our Tableau data source. So next, actually, we have to establish another connection, which is to our listings. So once again, we can click on connections and then we add, press Microsoft Excel, and then I'll click on my second Excel file, which is the listings. Moving on, you can just drag this sheet over here, which is the listings, next to the host. So in this case, actually, it's establishing a connection. So actually, in most cases, when we deal with data, sometimes the data may be too big with too many columns. So it may actually be broken down into smaller data, or in a sense of a summary page being connected to larger data. So in this case, we can establish a join as seen. So as you can see over here, upon dragging the listing data next to the host data, Tableau actually automatically joins it for us based on the host ID. So this would mean that it will be a one-to-many relationship for this specific data, where a host can have multiple listings or properties for rent. So what we get in the end is this joint data set. So I would like to get your attention to this area over here, this box. So as you can see over here, this is the data columns as seen. So specifically, if you see, there are small little buttons over here, which represents the type of data. So actually, when we upload the data, Tableau automatically selects the most appropriate data type for each column. So for example, for latitude and longitude, it actually gets assigned to a geographic role. And upon clicking it, you can actually see it's specifically for latitude. So actually, in this case, it's actually very useful for us because especially when we are visualizing, it's important to identify what sort of data type does the column represent. And based on that, we'll be able to obtain the appropriate visualization. So if there are any changes, likewise, you can just click and change. So one thing to note is if you're not very familiar with the term string actually represents a word or phrase, which is actually a data type used in programming. So with that, actually, we have gone through briefly the data source page. So I'll move on to the sheet page to show you more on where we actually get our visualizations up. So here we have a worksheet. So I have clicked the bottom left-hand corner to click on sheet 1. So this over here would be our canvas. These are our marks. This is a marks panel, a filter panel, and a columns and rows panel. So as you can see over here on the left, we have a data tab with all the available columns that were previously added in our data. So as I scroll past, you realize that some of them are blue, some of them are actually green. So this establishes the difference between dimensions and measures. So actually the blue pills are dimensions, which are also known as qualitative data. So this exists as categories, just as neighborhoods, groups. So these are the data we use to categorize and review the details in the data. On the other hand, those that are green in color are also known as the quantitative data, where the data exists as numbers measuring something. So with that, I'll briefly show you how to make a small visualization. So first off, I would like to drag price into column, as well as row into neighborhood groups into row. So what you can see over here is that just as I drag and drop it into the correct panels, we immediately get a visualization. So you may be wondering, actually, what does this visualization represent? So currently, when we drag a measure, when we write a measure into the columns panel, we immediately get allocated to a measure of sum. That is why each neighborhood group's sum of price is being represented over here. However, as we all know, there are different number of listings per neighborhood. So essentially what we would like to do is to change this measure into average. So what we get actually will become the average price of a listing per neighborhood. So moving on, I would like to show you how we can expand this visualization over here. So you can see this visualization is clearly not making full use of the canvas, and it's also a bit hard to see. So as you can see over here, on the top, we see a standard over here. It's actually a drop down, so we can change it to entire view. And what it does is to expand our entire visualization to fit our canvas, which is actually very useful, especially for later as well when we make the dashboard. Apart from that, actually, we can also drag specific features of the marks card, for example, like the colors. So things like our neighborhood group can be added to, for example, colors. So this will show each neighborhood group to a specific color. And another feature to consider would also be our label marks card over here. So what we can do is, for example, drag the price into our label. As seen, the price is actually represented by sum again. So it's important to take note that our marks card follows the same measure as our columns representation. So as seen over here, we get the average price marks label over here. So with that, actually, we have created our very first visualization, and we can change, for example, the sheet name over here by double clicking on sheet 1 and then typing the relevant name. And lastly, I would like you to also get acquainted with the Analytics tab as seen over here. So actually the Analytics tab simply has a few features such as getting the average line and certain other custom distribution bands and such. So for this case, I would like to just simply use an average line. So what we do over here is to drag the average line into a pane, into the table over here. So what we get is this average line, which is formed instantaneously, which reflects the average of the prices across all the neighborhood groups. Okay, so with that, actually, I have gotten you acquainted with this Tableau interface. So I'll just go back to the slides for a moment. Okay, so actually the next component of this presentation would be a brief run through of a Tableau workbook that has already been created, such that I'll verbally go through certain key features and considerations behind each visualization for you to understand better. So actually, I think as Prof. Eric mentioned initially, it's important to have a sort of analytics problem or insight that you wish to be drawn from a visualization or workbook. So actually, in this case, we have crafted the workbook around the analytical problem of understanding how well received Airbnb is in New York City. So now I will share the workbook and go through each sheet. Okay, so as seen over here, we have entered the Tableau workbook that has already been crafted. And due to time constraints, I will not be going through it individually, but what I can do, what I will do today will be to briefly share with you certain features that makes the Tableau visualization elevated in terms of standard. So first off, this is the first visualization I'll go through. So this actually shows the number of Airbnb listings across the price range as well as neighborhood group. As seen over here, there are a few key features to note. One is that there are actually two columns that break down the data. First by the price range and next by the neighborhood groups. So one important thing also is the next important thing would be the colors as seen over here. So actually the colors represent the intensity, the intensity of colors represent the number of listings. Also, we have our labels as seen over here and our average line. So actually our labels as well as our average line has been gone through previously, but more importantly, I would like you to focus on firstly the colors of the paint. So as you can see over here, for each bar, the different colors actually represented by the listing ID. So what we had to do was just to drag our listing ID count into color, and what we got was to change the measure into count. So essentially what we're trying to do here is to represent the number of listings by how strong the color is as well. So especially when you're looking at data, it's important to make it intuitive. And in this case, by doing so, we essentially managed to get it to manage to make this visualization even easier for a viewer to understand. Apart from that, you notice that there's also the price ranges as mentioned for low, normal, and high, followed by the individual neighborhood groups as seen over here. So to do so, we actually just drag two column pills as seen, the price range as well as the neighborhood group. So actually by dragging the price range first, we see that the data is split into the different columns, following which the neighborhood groups will then be divided into individual neighborhood groups by the bars. So it's important to take note of this order. So with that, we actually got a simple visualization here. And lastly, I would like to bring your attention to this filter over here. So as you can see, we can toggle between these different filters. So essentially how this is being done is through dragging the neighborhood group into filters, and then following which we show the filter over here. So when, especially in a dashboard setting, it will be easier for us to toggle. Likewise, a similar concept would be the going through of line parameters. So this is just a simple graph that is being made where we can change the different parameters based on our dashboard with our visualization over here. So parameters is similar to parameters actually a created field done by us, and actually very simple. However, due to time constraints, I will not be going through it. But you can just search it online, do a quick search, and it's actually very easy to craft. And because of the parameters, we are able to reduce multiple sheets of different time series graph into just a singular sheet like this. Okay, so moving on, I will go to this next visualization over here. So this is actually known as a tree map, which is very popular in Tableau. So a tree map is just a visualization with a variation of color and size to represent the number. So in this case, it's the number of listings. So as seen over here, we just utilize the marks card feature to allocate the colors as well as the size across the tree map. And also, we also included some text labels so that's easier for the viewer to understand this tree map. So with that, I'll move on to the next visualization, which is a simple bar chart. So for this, I'm also just going to go through the concept of a bar chart. So bar chart is similar to a ranking process. So especially when things like where we have to rank certain departments or rank certain prices in this case, you can use a bar chart. So bar chart is a way in which we can rank it in an order from, for example, most expensive to cheapest. So this is done by simply just putting the average price over here and using the table calculation function to rank. So as seen, actually, this is a very simple yet very effective way to communicate our data. So due to time constraints, now I'll move on to showing you our dashboard. So as seen over here, these are the previously gone through graphs, and we have just dragged it into a dashboard as seen. So actually, you can see that it's actually very easy to just drag this over here. And essentially, we have a beautiful dashboard and another page over here. So I'll just quickly show you how it looks like in full screen. So what we can do is to simply toggle and it will change as mentioned. And furthermore, it can also change by, for example, on a yearly basis. And we can apply it to, for example, just this date, this 2012 to 2014. And when I apply it, will not only apply for the first sheet, but also the second sheet as well. So essentially, a dashboard is a very interactive way for us to present our data, especially to higher ups or clients. And we can also cancel the filter by just clicking on this cancel filter button. So with that, I'll move on by clicking on the view more button to show you the next page. So likewise, we have a page similar to the previous one, except with different sheets involved. So one feature I'd like to bring to show you with a highlight feature. So for example, I want to highlight Brooklyn specifically. So I just include the highlighter for it. As seen over here, this is also very good when you actually present to your clients or higher ups. So likewise, this is also interactive and can apply to both the sheets as well. So with that, I have briefly gone through the dashboard and I'll now move on back to the slides. So after we are done, we actually can just upload it into Tableau Public as mentioned previously. So this is my copy of it, as you can see. So with that, we have gone through all these different concepts in Tableau, and I hope that within this short duration, you have managed to take away some of these concepts and also apply it to your own Tableau workbooks in the future. And I think the great thing about Tableau is how easy it is to implement by ourselves through just taking a quick search on the internet or looking through Tableau Public for inspiration. So with that, actually, I've come to the end of my sharing and I'll pass the time back to Brian, who will host the Q&A segment.
Thank you so much, Charlotte, for the introduction on Tableau, as well as a live demonstration of how Tableau can be used in our everyday work. So right now, we will have our second section of our Q&A. And in terms of, we will first go through all the unanswered questions. And then if you have any other questions, that pop up along the way, you can feel free to ask in the chat. So I guess one of the questions, we have a very interesting question here, which is if you have the business question in mind, and when doing visualization, will the data be considered as biased? Any way to avoid that? So this is actually a very good question. In terms of the data itself will never be biased, because if you are referring to the data as the spreadsheets and like the general spreadsheets that you have, the data itself, the rows of data will never be biased, because data is data and it's just there. But the visualization itself, when it comes to deciding how you want to showcase your data, that can definitely be biased. And actually, we have actually demonstrated this in one of our workshops slides for another workshop slides that we have prepared internally for NTU students. Charlotte, are you on the most updated Are you on the Google Slides version of the slides? Because actually I put in the Iraq War visualizations from Tableau Basic onto the slides.
Is it maybe later on we can share that part. I'm not sure where is it now.
Okay, maybe I can share screen instead then, because actually I have edited it
Okay.
into the slides. Yeah, so sorry. Let me share my screen. Okay, so actually this is, we imported this, we had this from another workshop that we have for Tableau Basic to teach to MBS. So actually this is illustrating how you can bias your data by changing how you visualize your data. So actually this is an infographic on Iraq's bloody toll, which is to show the number of deaths and the number of the number of casualties from the Iraq war. However, if you change, let's say if you flip the chart around as well, and you change the color from red to blue, and then you can change the title, you can actually change the entire message of your infographic to say that deaths are on the decline. And actually both these perspectives are kind of, that there's no right or wrong perspective. So one perspective is talking about the casualties of war, but the other one is talking about how the deaths have been decreasing. So definitely these two charts are biased, and it's up to you to both identify the bias, as well as if you have a certain message they want to push, maybe there's certain design choices that you can use in order to push your message across in terms of the data. So yes, definitely data visualization can be biased, and to avoid that, I guess you have to be aware of such things if data is being presented in a way that is manipulative. And I guess if you want to avoid being biased, you can also be aware of the way you choose your visualizations to avoid this kind of biasness. Yeah. There's another question we have, which is what are the day-to-day roles of a data analytics job? So I guess for this, Charlotte, do you want to answer?
Oh yeah, sure. So actually, in my current internship, I'm actually also I'm serving as a data analyst intern. So on a day-to-day, I would say that it really depends on the type of company we're working out, type of company and their job scope. But for my the personal company I'm working for now, they actually are wrangling with a large amount of transactional data. So as an data analyst, what we do is first to wrangle with this data on Python. But maybe for certain companies, they could use softwares like Autorix to wrangle with this data. Then following which, after cleaning and shipping the data, we then will move on to visualize this data. So it could be utilizing Tableau, could be utilizing Python to visualize the data for our clients to understand about this data without going through all these rules. So what we essentially try to do is to get the key insights and give them to our clients so that they're able to make certain decisions from it. So the second part of the question was, are there many, I would say, I think the question, are there many data analysts, is it? I think currently in the marketplace now, there are actually a great demand for data analysts simply because companies are evolving at such a fast pace that they have so much data, and especially since data is so rich in the sense that we're able to leverage on it for decision making. I think many companies are employing data analysts for many positions, whether it's in the business or even in the ops team. So it's important, I guess, whether as a normal employee or a data analyst, to leverage on data in the day-to-day work.
Thank you, Charlotte, for answering the question. So in view of the time, we actually can, we will conclude that we'll bring this webinar to an end. So we have officially come to the end of the webinar. However, we will still stay to continue answering your questions. However, can now declare this webinar as closed. So before you leave, we would like you to fill up your feedback on this form so that it can provide us feedback on how we have done and how we can improve our webinar. So I'll just leave this slide on as we continue answering the rest of the questions. So one of the questions is, viewers should also have access to Tableau. They also need to be trained on how to maneuver. Can this be exported to Excel? Charlotte, you want to cover this question?
Oh, okay, sure. So actually, the thing about Tableau is that there are a few ways in which a viewer can access. You don't need to have a Tableau Reader, Tableau Desktop or public version, Tableau Public version. So actually what you need is actually either a Tableau Reader or the person who uploads the data, uploads the workbook to be placed on the Tableau Public website. So actually, as a viewer, you can go to the website itself, and it's actually rather simple to maneuver, whether you put the new filters or highlighters. So it's actually quite easy. Or if not, actually, you can also have it in static visualizations, where we can just put it, screenshot it, and save it as a PNG format or JPEG file, and then actually put it into our sites itself. Yeah. Brian, have anything else to add?
None from me.
Okay.
Kenny, we can take 2 more questions. So one of the questions is, what's the difference between Tableau and Power BI? So for me, I guess I can answer this. In terms of difference, they're both doing the same thing. They're both doing data visualization. So they both have the same core features. I guess the more appropriate question is, which is more appropriate for your organization, I believe. And for that question, a few factors will come into play. I think the most important question is the ecosystem. So in terms of what is the existing tech stack that your company already uses. So if your company uses SharePoint, uses Power Automate, uses a lot of Microsoft tools, and you guys maybe already have a corporate office plan, like maybe Office 365 E5 or something, then you can consider using Power BI, because I believe that because it's easier to integrate with your existing ecosystem. So it's just easier to use in general. And also, if you have a high enough plan like E5, Power BI Premium already comes bundled with your Microsoft Office software, so there's no extra cost incurred for this. Charlotte, do you have thoughts on this?
I think you covered it well. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, then we have one last question, which is what's the difference between data analytics and data science?
Maybe I can cover this briefly. So actually, for myself, I did have internships in both the data analytics as well as the data science departments between 2 different companies. So actually, I think the primary difference between data analytics and data science is how in-depth it is in terms of technicality. So I'd say data analytics is still, in a sense, that we are at, as I mentioned previously, more of the understanding of the data, more of like the descriptive or diagnostic analytics of the data. So it's more of like deriving insights or understanding the data and what it represents. But then for data science, on the other hand, it's very much more mathematical. So it's a lot more about understanding certain, for example, leveraging on machine learning models, things like computer vision. So it's it's a big realm on its own as well, in the sense that you can really use a lot of statistics, a lot of math to derive certain insights. So things like forecasting, things like prescribing like certain decision making, things like your AI, which all falls under the data science realm. So I think for myself, I'm not a working adult yet, but I think it is important to establish a certain foundation in data analytics, because I think data science is just the next layer on top of data analytics, and it will be a sure foundation for you to then pursue data science, because it's wrangling with data, but on a much harder, I would say, level. Yeah. Brian, have anything else to add?
I think you covered it very excellently on the difference and similarities between data science and data analytics. I would say that data analytics is kind of like a subset. It's kind of like there's an overlap between analytics and data science, but I would say it's a kind of, data analytics is more like a subset of data science. So data science will require you to do analytics, but also maybe more complicated stuff like AI and ML and other stuff. And also, I guess this is the definition of the terms. So for the specific job description, for example, this will also depend on the size of the company. So for example, very large companies like MNCs, they'll have a clear distinction between the data analysts and the data scientists, and sometimes even the data engineers. So they all work together in different stages of the data pipeline to form like the data team, so to speak. But if you're in a smaller company, like say a startup, it's possible that you are the one doing everything from the data pipelining to the analytics to the data science to the presentation. So in terms of job scope, in terms of the job definition, I mean the JD, the definition will vary from company to company, but in general, the theoretical definition of analytics and data science is what we covered. I think with that, we will come to the end of the Q&A.